All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider meeting. SIG Cloud Provider is a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidance, which basically boils down to please treat everyone as you would expect to be treated, and explicitly so, please be kind to each other. And also, please raise your hand if you'd like to be called on, and I will call on you. So yeah, with that, let's dive into our agenda here. So I'll go through the sub-project updates and the agenda, and then we'll come back to the triage at the end, because I've got a topic that might take some time here. So I guess John, I see you've got an update for IBM Cloud here. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, just announced that our GA of the 1.28 on our managed offering came out last week on 9/21. So that was it.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yep.
Does anybody else have updates that they'd like to provide today?
For extraction migration, Kirtan, did you want to give an update on the webhook work?
Yeah, I just added. Yeah, added to the agenda list. But yeah, I can. So as part of the extraction migration, Nick has a kip which he started to provide a framework on the cloud provider code base to start a webhook server. My PR is mostly extension on top of Nick's changes to register the webhook as a validating webhook configuration at the API server. That way, now with this, we should be able to use the cloud providers should be able to use the framework to automatically just write the webhook logic and get the auto registration done.
That's great to hear. I guess since we're kind of jumping ahead to this, do we need to add like triage accepted to this and put a priority on it, or what's the process here, I guess?
Yeah, we should, triage accepted sounds good.
I'm trying to remember, is it triage dash accepted or just space accepted? Who remembers?
I think space, but
we'll see how that goes. All right. Okay, cool. So we've got that one accepted. And do we need to add the priority to it then?
I mean, I've never added priorities, but I don't know what the actual process is.
Okay. Well, I guess so. And I guess the next step, Kirtan, you're looking for reviews on this as kind of the next step here?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, great.
And yeah, maybe once if this is done, we can, I think the next step after this would be for the KEP to migrate the webhook to individual cloud providers.
Okay.
Or at least ask the teams yeah.
Okay, great. So I guess for anyone attending or listening to this meeting, if you are curious about this, please take a look at the PR we've got linked in the agenda, and then it links through to this KEP basically. Okay, great. Does anyone have questions or comments about that? All right, I'm not seeing any hands. So yeah, Kirtan, I guess we'll just try and get some reviews on that and maybe bring it up again at the next meeting or something.
Sure, thanks.
Are there any other sub-project updates that folks would like to share? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands going up. So let's move on to the regular agenda. So we kind of covered Kirtan's topic. I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to add to that, Kirtan, or did we pretty much address?
Yeah, it's pretty much interesting. Yeah.
Okay,
we
cool.
Can move to the other one.
All right, awesome. I'm just gonna do a little formatting here. Okay, so I've been doing a lot of work looking at this, looking at updating the KEP, and we need to answer a few of the readiness questions, and then a couple questions have come up on review that I wanted to bring here to the SIG to see what people thought. So I'll start with these questions on review because they're here, and then I'm going to switch to another terminal so we can look at the other questions. So Mo Khan had a few things that he brought up here, and some of these I'm still working on, but we got down to a discussion where I think, Mo has kind of two questions here. One is about doing like the forward migration and then the backward migration. Do we have any tests that show that this wouldn't break anything by going forward and backward like that? And I think, part of what this comment that I'm highlighting here is where we kind of got into this discussion. And, I thought that he was talking about the code in the KCM, but I think what Mo is asking is like, when we do the migration to the external cloud providers, do we have any tests that are showing the migration to them and then the migration back, that nothing is getting broken in these fields? And I don't think we do have any tests like that. And I'm not sure what we should, how we should respond to that. And then the other question he asked me as well was kind of getting into like, are we, have we done anything to confirm that the new code is not creating more load than the old code? And I'm a little bit confused by this one because was where we started was the old code became the new code, but then those projects have become kind of external projects managed separately by each of the providers. So it feels a little bit, kind of out of scope for me. And, where did I talk about this? It feels a little bit out of scope for me. His original question was, what effort has been taken to make sure the new code doesn't create a bunch of extra load that the old code didn't? And since we're moving to external CCMs at this point, doesn't that become like a purview of those CCMs? Like, how can we as a SIG confirm this when, we're not even testing all the cloud providers externally by themselves? We weren't even testing them all internally by themselves. So like, how do we answer this? So those were two of the big questions that came up on review that I'm kind of struggling with. Does anybody have thoughts or comments about these?
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying that it's a little out of scope for us to say and test all the different providers and ensure that we're not adding extra load, because the libraries we have for the cloud provider does allow you to also run like your own additional controllers. So there's nothing saying like, cloud provider A wants to also run, 5 other controllers. That's obviously going to add load.
Right.
But I think, well, what we can say though is that all of the controllers, like the core controllers, like they're actually the exact same implementation that we have in Tree. Like the controllers themselves and the calls they make to the API server are all the same. And the main difference really is the change in the actual like provider implementation. So if you call like one of the methods in the interfaces, it's possible that like the external implementation may do like extra calls compared to the in-tree implementation. But like you're saying, like that's kind of implementation details per provider. So I don't know if that helps. Just saying, like we're not actually like the actual core controllers are actually the same. We're just moving the controller logic from one component to another.
Right. I think what Mo is really asking though is like, do we have any data that confirms that we're not adding load by doing this? I think that's what he's kind of, because that's what he's asking here is like, what effort's been taken to make sure that new code doesn't create a bunch of extra load that the old code didn't?
Yeah, I guess there's kind of two approaches we can take for that question. The first one is like we can run like the scalability tests that we have in the external configuration and just kind of use the data points in that to say like, just to catch regressions, because we have tons of like test data and results with the in-tree configuration, and I'm sure we can do some like fairly easy benchmarking. But the other point also we could just say like, hey, like we actually have a lot of providers like already using this in production, and it's quite vetted like based on like real clusters and users. But it's not necessarily like a strong data point. It's more anecdotal, but in the past, like that's been a fine justification as well. So um, yeah, I don't know. Anyone else have thoughts on this one? Like for like I don't know, like AWS folks, if you did like your own benchmarking or tests when you're migrating EKS, like obviously like you don't have to necessarily share the data points, but just saying like, yeah, we did do some load testing and it's fine. Likewise for us for like GKE, I think there are some testing we did as well, but we can try to dig that up.
Yeah, like we had done like I mean, the scalability testing like as part of the not I mean not just for this, but we do this as part of every release. So as part of the normal process, we had done it even when moving to the external cloud process. So yeah, we didn't. Yep. So this has been tested at scale from the AWS side.
Okay. This is good. And thank you, Andrew and Kirthan. Like, I'll try to form some of this into a response. I'm thinking Mo is probably going to get back to me today. So I'll just keep the conversation going. But if either of you could take a review on this and maybe add your thoughts into this discussion chain, like that would really be helpful.
Sure, I can put the comment what I just mentioned.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Kirthan. And then the other question, kind of the first one I started with was kind of like, you know, Mo's asking like, what tests do we have do we have anything that tests the upgrade and then downgrade mechanism? This is where I was kind of having a little bit of trouble because like, Mo was saying like, say a field in a resource was always set to 5 with the legacy code, and then it gets set to 6 by the new code. On a downgrade, the resource would still exist, but now the old code would see a 6 instead of a 5, which it may not understand. Now, kind of my response here, I tried to restate the problem because I wasn't quite understanding it, but I said like, the former entry controllers, that became the external CCMs, I don't think they're actually making modifications to the node or service objects in a way that would do that. But I don't think we have a test that demonstrates that. Is there any like data we could back this up with? Or, I mean, I had kind of assumed that everything was just working the same. We'd already migrated like the labels and everything, like all that work had been done before things got switched. But I don't know if it's possible that a CCM could modify, like a node or service object in a way that would create this incompatibility. And I'm not sure how we demonstrate that.
Yeah, like what fields is he referring to specifically?
Well, he didn't have a concrete field here. That's why I was trying to turn it into a concrete example, because I'm not sure how much context Mo is bringing into this. Like I think maybe he's looking at this like yeah, we're upgrading some component that has an API CRD associated with it that they're tightly coupled or something, but it's not really the case here as far as I understand.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Like similar to the last point, we're just porting over like the same controllers between components, and the logic. I mean, the backing implementation might change what specific values that the cloud provider would return to those controllers, which could change certain field values, I guess.
Right.
But I don't see, it's not, I can't think of anything that would be considered like incompatible or breaking or like unusual, because it's for the like it's the exact same
Right.
controllers. Like they're not changing in any way. And as far as I know, like most providers, like their current implementations are based on the legacy implementations with maybe some like minor iterations from there. But for the most part, I don't see why it would be different.
Yeah. I mean, the only concrete example I can think of, right, is like, what if someone was running an old in-tree provider that had not migrated like from the deprecated zone labels or something, right? And then they switched to external and the new CCM like is somehow not aware of the old deprecated label. But like I know that we don't have any CCMs that wouldn't be aware that like that's all kind of coded into the core framework. But it's possible that someone could create a CCM that didn't, that's the only thing I could think of. But again, this puts the onus back on like, okay, we're part of the activity we're doing here is migrating these CCMs to external repos that will be managed by different project teams. Like these components are no longer being shipped as part of Kubernetes. So the user has some responsibility to find an external CCM. And then the question is like, okay, well, how do these contracts that we're advertising in the KEPs, how does that interact with like totally external components, that may or may not have been even created when this KEP existed? I mean, that's where I'm having trouble reconciling this,
Yeah, it might be good to ask Mo for like a more specific example. Like if he's coming from the Azure angle, if there's a specific issue or concern with the Azure implementation where that could be more possible, I think it'd be good to get more examples.
Yeah, that's a good call.
I guess he does have a good point though that maybe we should. Or it's possible that Jared might have added a test for this already. Actually, we just have to dig it up. But a test that does some run some basic E2E test like while it's entry and then migrates to does like the CCM leader election migration logic to audit tree.
Right. But then you'd have to go, and then you'd have to run it again, then migrate back down, then downgrade or something.
Yeah, but that it's kind of unfair to ask us to do that because like even in the standard Kubernetes suite, like we don't even test. Like we have no test for upgrade.
Right.
So and we definitely don't have tests for downgrade because we're not upgrading.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, like it's yeah.
Yeah, and I mentioned that in one part here. So like when I was trying to, tell him that we're trying to make the testing situation better, but I told him that currently, we only deeply test the cloud controllers on GCE, right? And with a subset of those tests running on AWS and a subset of those tests running on Azure. And as far as I know, like OpenStack and vSphere used to be part of the in-tree, and I don't think those were ever tested using the core tests. So, I mean, we had code in there before that was never tested. And I love adding more tests and stuff like that, but it's starting to get to the point where it's like, okay, there is no default cloud provider that's packaged with Kubernetes. So a choice first has to be made that you're going to run an external CCM. And then now you have to run this upgrade downgrade test. And I think that's just pushing our testing kind of beyond where we've been in the past. So like, I'm not saying it's a bad idea to do that kind of testing, but it is a big effort.
Yeah.
Like we do this kind of testing on OpenShift internally at Red Hat, but we have all sorts of operators that we've put in place to like, to manage the external to internal CCM like transit and whatnot. And like I don't think we have anything equivalent in Kubernetes. So someone's going to have to write that test and manually write all these like transactions to like upgrade the cluster, then downgrade the cluster.
Yeah.
That's part of my concern here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if it helps, I need to check with Jakob, but I'm fairly sure in GKE, like we have tested like the migrate to CCM and then migrate back to the old, like because it's just as part of like just like a mitigation or like if something wrong happens, like it's in our playbooks to be able to roll back. So
Right.
if it helps as an extra data point, like it is possible and we have done it.
Yeah.
But is it reasonable to ask for like automated testing for migration if our current testing infrastructure doesn't even do like upgrade downgrade of even the core components? It's probably not reasonable.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So I appreciate this conversation deeply, and I will try to express these points in the PR. I have a feeling that I'm not expressing myself in a way that is coming across very well to Mo, though, because I'm failing to make some of these points. So
Okay.
again, like any help would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, we could always, if it helps, just like set up like a separate meeting with Mo.
Okay.
Just hop on a Zoom. That might just help clarify a lot of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me know if it'd be easier to kind of unblock this with that.
Yeah. I'll see what Mo has to say today, and maybe I'll reach out to him. I think Mo works for Red Hat, or at least he used to. I think he still does. So maybe I could reach out internally as well and just see if we could get something going. Okay. Any other comments or questions about this before I move on to kind of my next point here? Okay. Let me. I want to switch to this because there were some. I noticed. I think I've gotten most of. I think I've gotten most of the major points answered or updated in here. But then when I was going through this, I noticed, in the production readiness questionnaire, and let me just, can everybody read that? Is that like, I want to make sure it's not too small. Yeah, but what I noticed was while scrolling through the production readiness review, then I started to notice all these TBD for beta, TBD for beta. So, and I started to look at them like, how can a rollout fail? Can it impact running workload? I mean, I guess at some level, like I can try to go through and answer some of these, but like other ones, like the specific metrics to inform a rollback, like I could use some help answering some of these. I don't know if we want to try to go through these here in this meeting. I'd be happy to if folks are up for it. Any objections to going through these, I guess? Okay. So for rollout, upgrade, and rollback, anybody have thoughts on how a rollout can fail? I mean,
Yeah, like the obvious ones are like misconfiguration, right?
right.
Uh, so that includes like yeah, like maybe you missed like the RBAC part or like the wrong flags. Um, other ways rollback can fail or rollout can fail. Yeah, I mean, like the first one's pretty big, like it's pretty broad.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll try to enumerate some of those. I
mhm.
guess like, can it impact already running workloads? I feel like it could if like,
Yeah, load balancers would be the big thing. Like if
right.
you messed up the migration and then you're not receiving updates for load balancers, like that's a big deal. So um,
Is there anything else we should add here? I guess this is for roll out. Yeah, probably. Hmm. Okay. Is there any sort of metrics that people should be looking for to inform, like what to say they should do a rollback? I don't think we have any metrics that are exported.
So I think I don't know about metrics, but um, some some things to check would be like if your nodes are failing to register. Um, like there should be generic like kubelet metrics probably around that. Nodes failing to register. Load balancer, like yeah, load balancer calls failing or not happening. Um, deleted nodes not being cleaned up. Um,
Would you say deleted nodes not being?
like if the underlying like VM for the node is deleted, usually by like an autoscaler or something, and then we have the controller that like checks if the node exists and then deletes the node object. So like that logic, like like if that was not running, a symptom would be all of these like downscaled nodes, like their node objects are kind of are going to be um, left dangling and like nothing's kind of cleaning it up. So that
Right.
would be another thing to watch out for.
Yeah.
And then I think CCM also has a bunch of like exported metrics. So like any of those just, could be helpful.
Right. I'll go back and look at those as I'm updating this. So, I mean, this has been tested independently, right? Upgrade and rollback. But I don't think we have anything in CI.
I would just say yes, tested manually by various providers or something like that.
So is the rollout accompanied by any deprecations and or removal of features? I think yes for deprecations, and we removed some of the providers, right?
I would say like for beta it's a deprecation and for GA it would be removed.
Okay, so I guess if the workloads are using load balancer type services, that would be like the only way.
And like new nodes are registering correctly without the taint. Like CCM logs, like that, like the obvious one.
But like, would a workload? I see what you're saying. They could look at the logs.
Like they can look at the CCM logs to see like if nodes are being registered successfully or whatever. And that's relevant for workloads because they run on the nodes.
Right, but like, how could an operator determine if the feature is in use by workloads? Like, once you've enabled it, all workloads are using it by default, right?
Mm-hmm.
But no workloads are specifically interacting with it unless they're creating load balancer type services.
Yeah, definitely for load balancer type services. For the nodes, I was more just saying, yeah, like there's no direct interaction except the fact that the workloads run on the nodes and the nodes like they can't run on the nodes unless the taint is removed and the node is successfully initialized. So like it's kind of indirect, but that's like the scheduling pods work. Like that's, I guess that's the
Right, right. Do we have any service level indicators that an operator can use to determine the health of the service? Maybe check the metrics on that. Is there anything else we could use?
Yeah, probably the I think there's some SLIs around like pod scheduling. So if the CCM was not working, similar to the last point, if CCM was not working and then the nodes are all left tainted, the rate of pod scheduling would be impacted, or like the latency of pod scheduling would be impacted. Yeah, load balancer again.
What are the reasonable service level objectives for the above SLIs? I'm not even sure how to frame this one.
I mean, you can always just say like NA and say like this is up to the providers. Like we're not.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense just to say the cluster should be working normally.
Yeah, but you can say like the specific targets for the SLIs, or like we can't, like we as maintainers of the Kubernetes project can't prescribe like specific SLOs because it's dependent on the cloud provider, their infrastructure, and the implementation of the cloud provider. So for the PR questions that are like asking like examples of like specific SLOs, like we can say like these are things to consider, but exact objectives are based on implementation details.
Are there any missing metrics that would be useful to have to improve observability of this feature? I'll check the current metrics and then maybe we can come back to that one. Does this feature depend on any specific services running in the cluster? I mean, do the CCMs themselves count as a specific server? A specific service?
I would probably just say here like yeah, like CCMs need to be able to authenticate and connect to like cloud provider APIs or whatever. So like it like the specifics depend on the cloud provider, but usually the CCM is connecting to like external API.
Okay. Yeah, this was the question that set Mo off here. Like he said, will enabling using this feature result in any new API calls? No, if anything, it will result in reduced API calls. I think this is like this answer is a little tongue in cheek. I don't know. I don't think I wrote it, but I think this answer is kind of saying that like, well, by default, we're taking all these API calls out of the core components, right? So it won't result in any new ones. And then, Mo's kind of pressing back on this saying like, well, that can't be possible. Like it's always possible to add new calls. And I was saying, well, yeah, but these are now external components, right? They're not core components anymore. And he seemed to think, he was like, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. And that's where I think we're stuck here. Anyways, I just thought I'd highlight that because I just remember that one. Okay, let me see if we got any more here. Okay. How does this feature react if the API server and etcd is unavailable? I guess it won't work, right?
Yeah, like for questions like this, I would just put like same as Kube Controller Manager, like whatever we expect from scheduler, Kube Controller Manager, it's kind of the same expectation.
Was there another one, like Kube Controller Manager? Was there another one you wanted me to mention as well?
That's the main one.
Okay. What are the other known failure modes? I mean, this like failure modes for these component, like we could talk about like, I don't know if they mean like should we mention things like other components not tolerating the taints and things like that? Or are they talking about the failure modes of the actual like CCMs or whatever?
Yeah, it's pretty open-ended. Like one example I can think of is like a failure mode being like the cloud provider backend is down, or like you're being like you've exceeded your quotas, so the requests are all failing. Like what is the expected behavior of those components, like in that kind of situation?
Okay, I can try and
That's just an
enumerate.
example.
Yeah. Okay, what steps should be taken if SLOs are not being met to determine the problem? I realize you guys can't see this, but I'm just. Let me, this is one of the documents that it's linking to about the Kubernetes SLI SLOs.
So what's probably like important context for the PRR, like the point of the PRR is not necessarily to have answers to all these questions, like or a good answer to all these questions. But my understanding is that it's just to ensure that we've kind of asked ourselves the questions and thought about it. So I think what's important is that like whatever we put in here, it's kind of just proving that we've kind of like done the exercise of thinking through some of these scenarios.
Yeah.
So for this one, I would say like what steps should be taken. Like the obvious ones are like, okay, we'll check the CCM logs. Like what's the issue, right? If it's a authentication issue, like make sure your RBAC is correct. If it's a quota issue with your cloud provider APIs, like ensure you increase your quota, make sure you have enough quota. If it's like a resource issue, like the CCM is not given enough memory or CPU, like adjust the resources for the CCM, like the CCM pod. If it's like a full, like there's a bug or like it just doesn't work, as a last, we can mention here, like last resort is just roll back. Like you can flip the feature gate to back to off and then go back to using entry and then try the rollout again once you've kind of addressed the bug. Yeah, those are some things that come to mind.
Cool. I think that's good. And thank you so much, Andrew. I'm just going to scroll. I think that's it now. So I will update this again. You know, one of the things I'm concerned about here is that, like, we're, you know, next Friday is the freeze date for this. And I'm hopeful we can get this updated and merged by then, but you know, there are still questions coming up on the review. And I'm not necessarily sure that I have like good answers for all of them. So I will continue to update this and continue to follow it. And of course, any reviews will be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to do another pass on the PR this week.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that, Andrew. Okay, so let's check I'm going to go back to let's just check our open issues to see if we have anything that needs to be triaged. I think we got everything, but it's always good to double check, right? Let's see. Okay, looks like we do have a couple here. SIG Cloud Provider GCP reboot flake. I don't know. Andrew, have you seen this yet, or?
No, I haven't seen this yet. Is it in the comments? Does it say what the failure is, like the reason?
It says test failed. At least one node failed to reboot in the time given. And it looks like it's in one of the GCP, you know, reboot functions or something.
Okay.
You want me to accept it and assign it to you?
Oh, sorry. Can I just read that comment above? This has like 4. Do you mind just clicking the flake rate? You just want to.
Can you read that? Is that good enough? Or I know it's super small.
Yeah. Why don't we accept it? And it sounds like it's just like an infra flake. Yeah, I can take a look.
Okay. What is your like A underscore?
And Andrew SY. Well, I can't.
All right, awesome. I'm sure everyone's entertained by me fumbling around GitHub. Okay. Cloud Node Lifecycle Controller. Shutdown in Cloud Provider fails for node with no provider ID.
I think there's a PR for this actually that we were reviewing. So I think you can just accept it and just, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, is the PR linked here? I might be is that okay? Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think those are the only new issues that we have. So cool. And that's the end of our agenda. Did anybody else have topics they wanted to bring up before we go here? Okay, going in 3, 2, 1. All right, thanks for coming out, everyone. And keep an eye on the reviews going on. And I guess we'll maybe see you all next week for the extraction meeting.
All right, thank you. Bye.